Miami is traveling to Florida State. I'm looking forward to being on the call for this one. It's a couple touchdown spread. This will be Saturday, 3:30 Eastern time on ABC. Couple questions for Florida State. Are they healthy at wide receiver? That's a significant question because last week against Pitt, they were without Keon Coleman. They were without Johnny Wilson. They were without Deuce Spann, and they were without Hakeem Williams. Now, they have plenty of other weapons to rely on. They are not an empty cabinet when those guys are unavailable. But when you think about Miami, it's going to be really important to get those guys back. Miami's pretty good on the perimeter. More on that in just a second. But they got to get their guys back, or at least one or two of those four that were out and missed time last week. Jaheim Bell's been a revelation. He could potentially step up in the absence of the few. And Ja'Kai Douglas last week coming off a career-best performance. They're bailing out kind of the Seminoles wide receiver core with 115 yards or so, I think, just by himself. So they're very capable, even in the absence of those guys. But, man, they're a whole heck of a lot better with those guys on the field. Speaking of injuries, let's talk about Miami. Are they healthy at corner? That's a real question. There were two corners that left the game in Miami's loss to NC State. They lost Jaden Davis and they lost Darrell Porter. Now, Mario Cristobal said Jaden Davis is fine, and the staff is, for the most part, optimistic about Darrell Porter being able to play. But if those guys can't go, and you're now working with some other guys that are behind them, whether it's Devontae Brown, who's a veteran, Damari Brown, who's their brothers, by the way, who's younger but very talented, if they're thrust in the lineup and Keon Coleman is available, that could be advantage Seminoles in a pretty significant way. There is also a big kind of groundswell of support for Miami making a quarterback change. And I've watched the tape. I've watched it over and over and over again. I think since we've called Miami's game against North Carolina, and then we called Miami's game this week. So I think I've probably seen every single snap that Miami's taken this year, every single one. And I've watched Tyler Van Dyke. And while the last few games have definitely left something to be desired as far as decision-making is concerned, I still think at this point he gives them the best chance. Now, will they make a switch? Will they go with Emery, the hotshot freshman that made the start against Clemson and led them to a comeback victory against Clemson? Possibly, but I still think Van Dyke on the road in Tallahassee in a hostile environment gives you a better chance at the moment to potentially pull off the upset. The big thing about Van Dyke, though, he's got to stop turning the football over. Some of the turnovers are forgivable because if you look at the interception numbers, a lot of people will say, well, there's 10 in the last 4 games. That's accurate. That is 100% accurate. That is etched in stone. True. But 2 of those interceptions were on the final play from scrimmage in a desperation mode. The other was with 4 minutes left in a desperation mode. So 3 of the 10 were probably not. It's hard to apply those because the game was already decided at that point. 1 of the 10 was a really bad decision. This was against Georgia Tech. That was on a post. He made a similar decision on another post. He's done that twice. He's also tried to throw 2 hole shots in cover 2 where the corner's dropping back and the safety's over the top and the corner intercepts. He's done that twice. That's problematic. When you make the same mistake twice, that is troubling. If I were Florida State, I would run that cover 2. I'd drop that corner. I'd play that safety over the top, and I'd see if I can't dare him into throwing another hole shot in there because my corner will fall off underneath it and intercept it. That's what I would do. But I would think that if Van Dyke is the guy, he's got to be smarter with the football. It's all good taking risks. It's all good taking chances. And when things are perfect, he's pretty dang good. But he can get confused in coverage, and Florida State does that an awful lot. Another thing to take into account, I know Jordan Travis, his numbers are not going to jump off the page the same way they would if you're Michael Penix or Shedeur Sanders. He's not going to have the same level of gaudiness to the stats. But if you actually watch him, especially last week, and I know Pitt's not great, but Pitt's okay on defense and they're pretty good in the secondary. But for him to go out there with that receiver core, as banged up as they were, to make some throws that he's made was pretty dang remarkable. He's playing at a ridiculously high level the last couple weeks. And if he can continue that ascent, that would be really huge for Florida State, not just in this game, but as they continue to pursue a playoff spot and ultimately a national championship. I really think he has another level to his game. One issue with him for a long time, the deep balls weren't great. That was a big thing. He was great running around, keeping his eyes downfield, great on the move, great on the underneath. But the deep balls were something that he wasn't exactly super consistent on. That's changed the last couple of weeks. He's hitting guys in stride. He's hitting guys in tight coverage down the field on low percentage throws, but he's pulling them off. It's been really, really impressive to watch. You watch this game too. Trey Benson's going to be a huge piece. Both teams are pretty good against the run. Both teams do a pretty good job, I think, affecting the opposing quarterback. I think both defenses are excellent. Both defenses have difference makers along the front. Jared Verse and Patrick Payton for Florida State, Ruben Bain, Branson Dean, and Leonard Taylor, and others for Miami. These are really good defensive lines on both sides. So this will be a fascinating matchup in the game. And then one other part of this game I just want to mention for a moment. Miami might be one of the most improved offensive lines in the country. They're going to have to play that way this weekend. They're going to have to play that way in a big way this weekend. They've run the ball better, they've protected better, and they're going to have to be at their best against an excellent defensive front that can make the quarterback's life very uncomfortable, especially a quarterback that might be struggling, seeing ghosts a little bit. They need to be really, really good in the run game and take some of the pressure off of Van Dyke or whoever is under center in this game. One trend to take into account in this game, Miami is 1-8 against top 5 teams since the start of the 2007 season.